Hello and welcome to kind of a special non-episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I don't really know what we're doing here, but anyway, my name is Megan, and my fabulous co-host is not Barney. My fabulous regular co-host is,
Hi, I'm Amanda.
and that's Barney. Okay, so this is not a regular episode. We are popping in because we were kind of chatting and had this light bulb moment, right? We create unit studies every month that are secular and progressive. We focus on own voice content. We give you a broad range of activities that suit different ages, different learning styles, all this kind of stuff. But then we were sitting here thinking, and I'm like, hold on a second. There are probably so many people in this group. We know there are so many people who follow us who are new to homeschooling, who are just starting homeschooling, who've never done a unit study. And I'm like, if somebody just handed me this PDF file and was like, here's a unit study, I'd be like, what the hell is a unit study? And what am I supposed to do with this thing? So it's like one of those things where you forget that you have to explain things sometimes or offer some additional context or insight. So that's what we're doing here.
Yes, absolutely. So we have been at this long enough that in my family, and I know in your family as well, Megan, we found our rhythm. And even though in my home we do use a lot of curriculum, it's pretty easy for us to shift on the fly. And so, yeah, sometimes it's easy to forget that in the early years, you're not sure what you can do and when you should do it and how you should do it. All of those good things, right? So the reality is there's no one right way to use a unit study. Even between Megan and I am 100% positive that we will approach them differently. Maybe not completely differently, maybe completely differently.
We'll find out. We shall find out. I must excuse my background noise, by the way. I explained in our regular episode this week, we are pet sitting this week, and we travel with my 13-year-old service dog, who's a Bernedoodle. We are actually pet sitting this week for another 2 weeks, actually, for another Bernedoodle. His parents have gone to India to visit family. They are currently having Bernedoodle WrestleMania in the living room while we're trying to record. And in all honesty, we recorded a full episode today. And for the most part, they did a pretty good job of staying quiet. So I'm like, we're almost done. We're going to go for a WALK when we're done here. And so I'm going to let them wrestle in the background. I hope it doesn't drive you too crazy. But yeah, so what Amanda said, 100% true. There's no wrong way to use a unit study, really. There's so many different ways that you can approach them. And so the versatility is really endless. So we thought today we would look at our hurricane unit study that's available as a sample to anybody in our Patreon group and just kind of break down between each of us, section by section, how we would approach using that unit study in our homeschool environment.
Well, yeah. And actually, you made a little slip. The Patreon unit study, the hurricane one, is free to anyone. You don't even have to sign up for a Patreon account. You can just go to our Patreon page, stay completely anonymous, download this specific unit study and give it a try. Then, if you're interested in it and you're like, oh, that actually worked for us and I like them, we have there's like different subscriber levels. And if you subscribe at $7 a month, you get one of these unit studies every month. It automatically becomes available to those subscribers at the $7 and the $12. But the $7 is the minimum for the unit study each month. With this hurricane unit study, like literally anyone who goes and checks it out gets it for free. You do not like I said, I hate when they're like, "Oh, it's free," and then you have to give them your information and then now you're on their email list. I just wanted to check it out. Like you lied. It was a bait and switch. This is not a lie. I promise it really is free.
Yeah. That or the dreaded 7-day free trial, but we're holding your credit card because freaking I'm gonna forget to cancel that thing. And that's what they're banking on, right? Yeah. So how
Or
about that?
some places have been doing the yeah, some places have been doing the like, we charge you up front, but then we'll refund you if you cancel it within 7 or 14 days. I hate that because
It's even worse.
yeah, right?
Uh,
This is not that.
no, right? All right. Okay. So our unit studies kind of have a similar flow, but then we tweak them depending on whatever the topic is to best fit the topic that we're doing. Typically, you're going to get book and movie recommendations in there, which is there. So let's start with books. What's your first step, Amanda, with these handful of books that are here?
So for me, I'm going to open this up and I'm going to go through all of the links myself first just to see where they're going, right? Like I know that we vet this ourselves before we put it up, but even still, when I downloaded it and sent it to my kiddo and said, "Hey, we're gonna do unit studies this month, and this week I want you to do hurricanes," I went and looked at where each one was so that I could see, is there a Kindle book in Kindle Unlimited that we can read for free? Do I wanna go check, is it kind of expensive? It's only in paperback, or, like, something going on where I wanna go check the library and see if I can get it, or check in Hoopla and see if I can get it there, like the digital version for free. So with the books, that's what I'm gonna do first. And then I'm gonna do it with all of the links in here because we're pretty strict with our screen time. There are things that kiddo definitely isn't allowed to get on without me, other things, that he's just not allowed to get on, full stop. Generally speaking, that's not gonna be an issue with any of the links that we include, but I do check those things. Then I just send it to him and I say, "You should look at these and read whatever is of interest to you."
There you go. That works. Yeah. So for the books, typically we try to put different age brackets in there. So if you have younger learners, they could be accessible for all. It kind of depends. Maybe the reading level is a little bit higher, but it could be a great audiobook on car rides, or it could be a good read aloud if you're a read aloud kind of family. If the lower reading level books are appropriate for them, you can just toss them to them and be like, hey, this looks interesting. What do you think? Let's discuss, right? So you can kind of play it by ear. If you have a little bit of an older learner, some of the younger level books might not be their jam, and you might want to just lean into some of the older stuff, but that's why there's a variety that's there. So you can kind of pick and choose what works well for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say, like, in our house, I have an 11-year-old who still very much enjoys a picture book sometimes, or something that's at a little bit lower level. But he will also enjoy some of the things that are maybe geared more towards teens. And so, your kiddo, if you want to pre-screen the books and say, I got this book, let's look at it together, let's talk about it, go for it. If you wanna be like me and say, "Here are the options, click the links and see what tickles your fancy, read whatever you want," and, maybe it's one of those things where he's actually reading for the whole week because he picked all 3 of the books that are there, for all of the ages. You got the younger kiddos, the kinda middle grades, and then the teen book, and, by all means, go for it. We're not gonna include a teen book that is, you definitely don't want your middle grader reading this. It's fine.
No, and typically, if we do, we'll put like content warnings that are there if something's a little bit more sensitive. I know in our September unit study, we talked about the labor movement and specifically the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire. And there's a movie actually about it that we link in that's in there. It's like the most obscure movie you could ever that I went through and time stamped it as far as like anything that might be like an earmuff situation, depending on the sensitivity level of your kiddo or whatever. And that way, too, you don't have to sit for an hour and a half and pre watch the whole movie. If you just want to hit those couple of timestamps, you can, and then you're good to go. So there's actually a link with that description of video of me just like, here's what I found. Here's 3 or 4 things you might want to keep in mind when you're deciding if this movie is a good fit for you right now. So then and the other thing was Amanda brought up, like, cost of books sometimes and stuff like that. Don't forget about interlibrary loan. I mean, our library system is being stripped to the bare bones at this point because it's 2025 and that's where we're at in America. But hopefully, we'll still have interlibrary loan, right? You can go to your regular library and they will search the catalog for the entire country and ship you a book. I mean, we lived in South Florida, they'd be shipping me books from like Montana, right? When we lived in Texas, they charged a shipping fee for interlibrary loan. And they would say, oh, it's going to be $1.47. Is that okay? I'm like, uh-huh, that's going to be fine. And it would be some out of print rare collection book that was like $300 online. And I'd be like, I'm good with the $1.47. Thank you. So don't forget about interlibrary loan. Many libraries participate and it opens up a huge range of books for you.
Yeah, you definitely have to be more organized than me to make that work. I'm not. That's not a, like, on Monday you give it to your kid and on Tuesday he's finally, "Hey, can I have this?" You're not gonna have it by the end of the week, but
It does
yeah.
take a little time. There's some patience involved in interlibrary. It is literally being snail mailed across the country for you. So yeah, definitely. Then we've got a section of videos and they work very similarly where I mean, you have everything from Magic School Bus. And I'm sorry, I have teenagers. We would still watch the Frizz. Miss Frizzle's the best. We love her. And then you'll have some scientific videos in here that get a little bit deeper. But you can preview them if you'd like to and see what works for your kiddo. If it's a little bit above your kiddo's head, that's okay. You can pause the video throughout and have conversation and discussion and go, I didn't understand that term he just used. Did you? No, I didn't understand that. Let's Google it. There's nothing wrong with kind of having that exploratory spider web level of activity with your kids. It doesn't have to be completely linear.
Absolutely. And when you're not like Megan and you don't enjoy a unit study, you just send it to your kid and say, watch whatever you want.
That works too. Then once we've established kind of some books and some videos about hurricanes and things like that, we dig a little bit deeper, right? So some related topics to hurricanes. So we've got the Red Cross, right? Who founded the Red Cross? How they might have assisted in your state, and you can go down a whole rabbit hole of the Red Cross, right? About funding and about the way they help in disasters and things like that, right? I mean, we've just had these horrific fires in Los Angeles, right? The Red Cross is 100% there. There was a tragic plane crash the other day in the DC area. The Red Cross is there, right? They are everywhere. So who are they? What do they do? Who funds them? All that stuff is a great activity. The Cajun Navy, which I've lived in hurricane zones my entire adult life. So the Cajun Navy really became known after Hurricane Katrina. It's basically just a bunch of people who have their swamp boat type things and motorboats and things like that that are good in swampland there, kind of the low bottom, shallow boats. And they were like, people need help. We have boats. There's flooding. Let's go. And they organized themselves and went out. They were pulling dogs out of attics after Katrina and off of roofs and all kinds of stuff. And now they've become a thing where they have like practice drills and they welcome people in. It's entirely volunteerism. So that's there, which is pretty awesome. And then we looked at how pets and farm animals are impacted by natural disasters and how laws were changed after some of the natural disasters that we've had to make sure that pets are safe, but also their owners are safe because there were owners who didn't evacuate because they wouldn't leave their pets behind. So it impacted both people and animals. And now there's actual laws in place to take care of some of those scenarios that people encountered. So we kind of spider web out beyond the hurricane and think about it from a bigger perspective or a higher view.
Yeah, no, and I think that's the real advantage with a unit study, right? Like you can study very specific things, and in your own home, you could go down the rabbit hole with hurricanes. But something like this, where you've got a few other things, the chances are you wouldn't have thought of each of these three things as related to hurricanes. And, that it's just the extra ideas, right? I think every homeschool parent, caregiver is looking for something interesting. You're constantly on that quest for maybe this will be the thing that's, oh, this is a great opportunity. And because we work together to try to make sure that we're hitting different things and, like Megan has great ideas. And then at the end, I come in and I'm a total pain in the ass. And I'm like, I really think that maybe we should
We need
this
a
or
worksheet. We need a worksheet. We need a worksheet.
every month. Every month, you have to put some kind of actual deliverable in there. I know that's not your style, but there are people out there who really want that, and it makes it so much more valuable. So, maybe it's a crossword, maybe it's a word search, maybe it's a writing prompt, but there's always something in there and often a coloring page or something like that as well. There's always something there that you have and you've got a tangible. So if you need to keep track, if you need to keep records of things, a unit study, one of our unit studies will always have something that you can put in your folder that you're showing to whoever you're keeping track with.
Mhm. Yes, Amanda, make sure because I forget. I try to remember, but I forget. Okay, so that first page kind of tends to be somewhat similar most months, right? Where it's like the
Mhm.
foundation information and then some branching out. And then we get all sorts of difference, right? I mean, sometimes it's, you know, games or activities or STEM things, word searches. I've made like dinner time conversation cards for some of these where and there's a cheat sheet on the back. So if you're like, I can't start dinner time conversation, I don't know anything about this topic, right? I totally do the dinner time conversation cards, and then there's like a parent tip sheet too that's you could steer the conversation in this direction. So we're not gonna throw you out there and let you sink or swim. There's helpful information there for you if the topic is new for you as well. So some of the activities in the hurricane one, we've got watching simulations of the previous 5 hurricanes, at least at the time that this was built. That might change over time. Using basic household ingredients to create a hurricane in a jar. And to Amanda's point, if you need to provide something as well, you could always have your kiddo do a write up of what they observed or something. But you can also, depending, like I've homeschooled in Florida before, and now I homeschool in Florida legally again now, even though we're never really there. And you could take a picture for an evaluator in Florida. A picture of you doing this experiment is 100% valid. And you just slip that in your folder and you're good to go. We talked about hurricane names. Have you ever really given a ton of thought to where they get hurricane names from before? I mean, there's a whole methodology to it. There's a retired list. When a storm becomes deadly, that name is retired. Bonus research topic: what happens when all the names are used? Because the alphabet, they run on alphabet, right? So it's the first storm of the season is an A, they go all the way through Z. But what happens when it's actually when they've run out of letters? We had a season like that. I want to say it was like 2005, 6, 7, somewhere in that like mid where we had so many storms that we ran out of letters. So it's a thing. So figure it out. If you don't live anywhere where you have hurricanes, you're probably never going to know these weirdo facts, but they're there and they're good to have. Create a list of supplies you might need if you were in the path of a hurricane, and you might modify that activity too. If you live somewhere where there's tornadoes or wildfires or landslides or whatever the case might be, hopefully you already have some of those things, but maybe you're new in that area and you don't really know what you would do, right? Create your list. And then the other one is,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
And I'm gonna say, like, with something like that, especially as the adult, you have a list, but this is a great opportunity for you to remind yourself, like, hey, a unit study that might be about hurricanes is also about life skills and teaching your kid to sit down and think about what they would include in their list now and possibly when they're older. Because the list of the most important things a kid is going to save is not the same thing that the parents are going to save. And it's not going to be the same thing when they're maybe living on their own for the first time or they're in university or, whatever. And so talking through these things and using this as a jumping off point of, hey, we can expand it in this way and really focus on life skills as well as just, an interesting educational deep dive that we've decided to do this week or this month.
For sure. I think it's just life skills, like you said too, in general. I mean, we've ended up in some of the wackiest situations. And it's even though you're probably never going to encounter that same exact situation again, the thought process and the critical thinking and the troubleshooting that went into fixing the original thing is so transferable to other things. And not to say you can't get these things from a textbook, but a lot of it comes through these sort of different types of activities that are encouraging you to think in different ways. So it's all good stuff. Then we have some STEM challenges. Hello, especially for, I mean, this is good for all ages, but especially for younger kids who need that hands on component, right? I mean, it's just, it should be so organic and so engaging and so hands on when they're younger. It's one of the reasons unit studies are amazing in elementary school because, and even before, right? Because they can really dig in there and you can change it up and you can pick from, an activity that seems like it fits the mood of the day, right? Or the interest level, and you can go a little deeper. So there's 2 things here. One is bridge design software, which is super cool. It's a free software program that you can use online. And you build a bridge so you can sit and do it together. Your kiddo can do it independently. I'm not building a bridge with my kid.
Oh, I got roped into building the bridge with my kid. I did. Yep.
Were you
That's why
cursing
I'm
me for putting
laughing
this in there when you
a
I need to
little. The amount of hours that were spent on that damn bridge building software. And then you drive a truck across it and watch it crumble and then try to figure out how to fix it. Ugh. Yes.
see if it
I mean,
totally
my kids loved
kills.
it. As the adult, I was like a little bit less in love with it.
I won some bonus points with Winston that day. I'll take it.
Mhm.
So yeah, you can build your bridge and then you can test it against hurricane forces. So you can literally blast like 150-mile-an-hour winds at your bridge and stuff like that and see if it withstands. But it's a huge lesson in engineering and natural disasters and all kinds of stuff. And it's fun, right? Maybe not for Amanda, but for everyone else, it's fun. Another thing that you can do is build a structure. It can be a building, it can be anything. and use stuff that you have, right? Or stuff that's at least easy to pick up, maybe at the dollar store or something. Nobody's asking you to go out and spend $1 million to do this stuff, right? So you could do Play Doh or clay or popsicle sticks, right? Grab some scotch tape, some printer paper, and then you could use a hair dryer or something similar, maybe a fan that you have laying around to record your observations as far as what happened to your structure, right? So kiddos can say, did your structure stand up to the force of the hair dryer? What changes would they make if they rebuilt their structure? And it's really taking those critical thinking skills and that problem solving to the next level with this activity. And yes, you can put this piece of paper in your folder, and Amanda is so happy at the end of the day.
I look, I just know the struggle, right? I know for the situation we're in, a photo does not work,
Wow.
even for
Okay.
the science stuff. Like if I submit a photo, it comes back inevitably. And where's the written paragraph that supports this? So if I just have a worksheet that's like, fill in this worksheet, even if you fill it in poorly, it's so much easier than me having to be like, okay, now we have to write a paragraph and it has to be a proper paragraph because that's what she's asked for. Like just I'm all about making my life easier. If we can just check it off, knock it out at the beginning instead of having to go back. Remember this activity with this picture? Can you come up with a paragraph to explain what happened and why? My kid doesn't want to do a paragraph that explains what happened and why, especially
Yeah.
after the fact.
Heck no. And so if you're new to homeschooling and watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, we have to write paragraphs and turn them into people, Amanda homeschools through the California charter system. So she has a teacher that she's accountable to for specific deliverables and things like that. I've homeschooled in 4 states and no one's ever asked me for anything like that. So it just very much depends on your specific setup and what you've chosen for your family and also the laws in the state that you're in. So do not panic. In my 4 states, a picture would have been more than adequate. In Texas, you don't even need the picture. No one's checking on anything. So, yeah, so don't panic if you're not in a state like that. And you're like, nobody's told me I need to be doing these things. You might not to be doing that. You might not need to be doing those things. So it's okay.
Yeah,
And
that's it. There are lots of states, and even in California, there are ways to homeschool where you would never have to provide those things. We right now have picked a way, and we have also picked a school that is quite strict with their requirements. And so, like we have certain things we have to do in certain ways, but absolutely there are lots of different ways to do it. And nearly, not every, but nearly every state has an option that includes very little paper keeping. So
mhm.
don't stress about it. If you don't need this paper, you're like, why is Amanda so hung up on a worksheet? If you might not need it, it might not matter to you. But there are people that do want to do it that way or that do need
Yep.
it. And so we just really want to make sure that this is a unit study when we work on these together. It's just like our podcast, right? We really try to make sure that we're bringing multiple sides to what homeschooling looks like. Not everyone does it the same way, and that's a good thing, right? There are lots and lots of ways to do homeschooling right. There are lots and lots of ways to do a unit study right. And that might mean that you use every piece that's in this unit study. And it might mean that there are pieces that you're like, yeah, we don't need that. We don't need to do a crossword. We don't need to do a word search. Like that's not our thing. And that's totally fine. That's the goal of this is to provide enough resources that it's valuable for anyone who wants to use it, enough jumping off points that it's actually a really good tool for any family that wants to use it without any requirements whatsoever about what you actually have to use within the unit study.
Yeah, you can cherry pick the living daylights out of a unit study. You do not have to sit down and do it from start to finish and then feel like you have failed if you haven't. If your kid loved the bridge building in the software program and you never busted out popsicle sticks and scotch tape, it's okay. It's totally
Yeah.
fine. You don't have to do everything that's in here. We just try to give a really wide variety. And if you feel like we're tapped out on hurricanes, we're good. We got the drill. Good. It's okay. Fine. It's okay. Right? There's no rules. It's fine. It's all
Yep.
good. So I will say back to the worksheet really quick. If you are new to homeschooling and no one is asking you to document stuff, our theme for this week that we just recorded for the podcast happened to have been like self care and how overwhelmed and tiring life can be and all that kind of stuff. I personally, Amanda might not agree, would encourage you to not do work that no one's asking you to do. Right? If you have a kid in the first grade and you are in a low regulation state, like you're homeschooling in Texas, you're homeschooling in South Carolina, no one is ever going to come to you and say to you, I would like to see exactly what work you did on February 2nd. No one's going to do that. And if your kid's in the second grade, it doesn't freaking matter. It really doesn't, right? Like it's the cumulative that all makes a difference, right? And the forward progress and the forward momentum. So I would encourage you, if no one's asking you to do the stuff that Amanda just suggested, maybe keep a handful of samples if it makes you feel better, right? You do not need to document every moment of every single waking day. You're just making your life harder. And if you're not being asked to, don't make life hard. That's just my own personal advice.
That's it. I'm going to give 2 things. I have 2 comments on that. 1, I would probably try to make sure that you're keeping a sample a month or maybe every other month, only so that you've got a portfolio for yourself. Because especially in those younger years, it's really easy to be like, what are we doing? Are we learning anything? And so to be able to go back and look at all of the work that you've done in the last year, even if it's only 5 worksheets over a year, you will be able to see progression and that will help you and your mental health and your
Yes.
homeschooling quite a lot. So I do think there's value in making sure that you do at least occasionally keep a piece of paper that you can pull out and look at later to reassure yourself that, yeah, I can see progress from month to month. The second thing I want to point out is that worksheet is great. And if your kiddo wants to sit down and practice writing and drawing and all of that stuff, awesome. If you are new to homeschooling and no one has told you this, it is not so important that your kiddo sit down and write on that worksheet. If your kiddo struggles with writing, maybe they want to speech to text dictate it into a computer. Maybe they want to have a conversation with you. Maybe they want to dictate it to you and you write it down for them. The important part is that you're having that conversation and that you know that they know what's going on and that they learned it. This was a huge epiphany for me in about second grade when I was getting so frustrated because these types of worksheets that we had to turn in, like the answers he would write down would be, 4 or 5 words. And I'm like, if we talk about it, he gives me these amazing, insightful answers. But if he has to actually write it, it's hard. He's not that great at writing. It's his brain is working so much faster than his hand can. So he takes the path of least resistance and writes as few words as possible. I would much, much, much rather him give me an amazing explanation for what's going on and me be the one to write it down so that I know he understands than to be like, no, you have to be the one to, I want to see it in your handwriting. There's a time and a place for practicing handwriting. There's a time and a place for making sure that they can write something if they're in a position where they need to actually physically handwrite something. It does not need to be on your STEM worksheet.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with all of that. And there was something that you said that came into my head when you said that. Oh, the other thing is too, we've talked about this. We did an episode in season 1 called What the Fuck Did We Do to Kindergarten? Right. And in part of that, we talked about the physiologic appropriate time to start writing, right? Your 4-year-old, your 5-year-old does not need to be holding a pencil. Those are your times for doing pincer grasp activities and things like that. Just because kindergartners in public school are sitting there doing worksheets doesn't mean your kindergartner has to as well. So you're good. It's all good. Don't replicate something that's so tragically broken, you've decided not to use it. Okay. Last in this one is a word search that's here. This you can do together. You can do it independently, whatever might be the case. Every time I say together, Amanda's, oh, here she goes again. You, however it works for you. But you'll find these in our, like Amanda said, sometimes it's a coloring page, sometimes it's a word search, sometimes it's a crossword puzzle, whatever. There's all different kinds of activities that we put here. This is a vocabulary exercise. It's just a word search, right? And so it's all hurricane related. So
Technically crossword puzzle.
sorry. Yes, sorry. My brain always does that, right? Why
Yeah.
does my brain do that? Yeah, it's a crossword in a vocabulary exercise. A word search is lovely, but it doesn't, you can find the words without ever knowing what they mean. This actually
Okay.
tells you what the words mean and encourages you to expand your vocabulary. All right. So this is just one of our unit study examples. We have, goodness, we have hurricanes, There's 6 of them over there now in Patreon. There'll be a 7th one in the next couple of days that's coming together, but they're over there. If you ever have a question on how to use one of the unit studies, reply to the thread in Patreon. If you don't want to post it publicly, it's okay. You can send us an email or a DM. We have a private Facebook group. You can post your question there and say, "Hey, I'm not really sure where to start with this. Yeah, here's my specific reasoning. Here's my specific scenario." We are here to help you. It's not like we drop it in your lap and then run away until the following month. So if you have any questions about the unit study or anything else for that matter, that's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Well, in the meantime, happy homeschooling and happy unit studying. It's one of my favorite activities.
It's worth giving it a try. I'm not going to say it's one of my favorite activities, but I do think that our unit studies are pretty good. And we just, in December, we did a whole month of unit studies, right? We took it easy with a lot of other things. And I just let my kiddo dive in each week. I did one. One other thing that I want to point out is for all of our unit studies that we do, there's the bright, colorful one. And then there's a black and white version that if you want to print the whole thing off, right, it doesn't eat up all of your color ink. But also, if you have a kid who's a little sensitive, my kiddo is quite sensitive to visual stimuli like that. And he actually prefers to work off of the black and white one. So the first time I sent him the really colorful one, and he was like, "It's too much. Can you please send me actually, he didn't ask if I could send the black and white because he didn't know it. But, he was like, "It's too much." I'm like, and I was like, "You know what? I got this." And so I just make a point of sending him the black and white one each month or each time I send it to him, and so there are those options too. You can print it off. The links aren't going to work if you print it off, right? But there's things in there that you might want to print off. Or you can just use the black and white one if your kiddo is, I really need something that's a little bit more low key. It all works, right? There's so many different ways that you can use it. And that's the point, especially if you're just starting out. It's really easy for it to seem overwhelming. And yes, we joke about it. I joke, I'm not a unit studies person, but I'm a gatherer of knowledge. And so from that regard, while we don't unit study as our primary way of homeschooling, we absolutely enjoy anything that encourages us to learn something new that we didn't know yet.
You said that though, Amanda, and it makes me realize like if this is a unit study 101, like here's how to use a unit study, that's one of the questions we haven't answered is how does this fit into your homeschooling? Right.
Mhm.
So, and it could be, and that goes back to what we said at the beginning, where we're going to use these very, very differently. My kids in elementary school, unit studies were the basis of their education. That was before we transitioned into unschooling. We would pick a topic and we would go deep for weeks. It could be something where you do unit study Fridays or unit study in the afternoon or one unit study a month and you just kind of sprinkle it into afternoons where you don't have anything else scheduled, but you've already done curriculum in the morning or whatever the case might be, or your kids are learning online. And then this is because that's more solitary. Perhaps the unit study is the time that you come together and spend a little bit more time together and learning together. So, to answer your question, can it be their entire education? Yes. Can it be a supplement? Yes. Right? The
Yeah.
answer is yes to all of the above.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Maybe you have this definitely applies in our home. We're pretty structured. We do use a lot of curriculum. We use a lot of classes. But what I found pretty early on was that if we tried to do any sort of summer breaks and, big spring breaks and things like that, but especially the longer breaks at Christmas and spring, summer, my kiddo really struggled with getting back into it. First off, got a little bored in the summer. And then second off, it's a struggle to get back into a structured, scheduled learning rhythm. And we do so much better if we're still learning on those breaks. It might not be so much the set curriculum, but unit studies work really well for us at that time because he's still getting online, he's reading, he's thinking about things. It's educational, but it's not the regular structured curriculum stuff that we're doing. And so for some people, that might be where you want to slot in some unit studies and some of those things that are a little less structured, but still fun and educational. And it can kind of help with that transition as well. So I definitely save them. I don't do them each month in our home. We save them. Like I said, we did 3 or 4 of them in December. We'll do kind of all of the ones that are coming out now. We'll do those probably in July and August. And I'll just, put them in a folder on my computer and save them until later. And then we'll actually do them at that point.
Hmm. So flexibility is endless.
Yes.
Right. Well, we hope that this has been helpful and informative in some way. But if you have any additional questions, you know where to find us. We're pretty much everywhere. You literally can't type Homeschool Moms Unfiltered into Google without finding 700 ways to contact us. So let
Yes.
us know. We're always happy to help. Happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a great one.